All right, happy to be joined now by head coach of the Florida Mutineers, Atura, joining us via Skype right now. Atura, while we have you here, I'd love to unpack the Call of Duty Atlanta weekend. It was a very impressive showing by the Florida Mutineers, your team. Let's start, though, even before the weekend itself, because so many people were already foreshadowing a final of Chicago and Atlanta. So how did you sort of keep your team focused on the prize, even though the attention wasn't necessarily on them going into the weekend?
So, well, leading up to the event, there was obviously everyone just like assuming it would be a Chicago-Atlanta event. And, our team, we knew we were a dark horse. We have so much talent and our ceiling is so high. We just kind of had to just, get it together, get our flow going. It took us a little bit, but like right before we left, we kind of knew we had we just started clicking and our team started playing really well literally a couple days before we left. We had like a scrim versus pairs and we scrimmed Chicago as well. We played them really well. And then as soon as we got to the event, well, we kind of didn't have such a great showing off break. We played London, but after that, we really showcased how good we really are.
Can you tell us a little bit about that scrim with Chicago? Did you notice things in the scrim that also showed up in the game?
Yeah, so Chicago is probably one of the teams we scrimmed the most online and on land. But like when we were at Minnesota, we scrimmed them probably for a couple hours before we played our matches. And then at this event, we scrimmed them before we played London. Like our first series and the second series, we played Chicago. So we kind of knew like their play style, their habits, and their tendencies. So we kind of abused that when we did play them. That's why we played them so well. Like I believe when we did play them, it should have been honestly, I believe we should have won every map. I think it should have been a 3-0, but GG's to them was a very close series.
So we'll get to Chicago in a little bit in Atlanta. Let's talk about London. What adjustments did you make and tell your team from the first London game where the team lost 3-1 to the second London game where you were able to win?
Well, honestly, I honestly think some of the guys were just a bit out of it. Like the guys were a bit tired for the first match. It was really early. We got there around 8 a.m. And the day prior, we got there at like 11 a.m. So we got to the hotel on Thursday around 11 a.m. And we actually weren't able to check in, and the guys were probably off of like maybe 2 or 3 hours of sleep when we landed in Atlanta. So I feel like it just messed with everyone's sleep schedule. And then the following day, you could just tell like the vibe and like the energy was just very low. And so after the first series, like I believe it was Chance Mox, he had a big motivational speech for us. He was like, "Listen here, guys, we're not losing again. We're gonna win this whole thing." And I feel like that really motivated everyone to just like get on their A game. We went right in the back to the pro lounge and started scrimming for the next 5 hours, leading to our after game, and I feel like we really showcased how good we are right after that.
So just going back to the acclimatizing, do you now go back and say, hey, maybe we need an extra day to get these guys some rest when they land or when they travel?
Yeah, so unfortunately, like that was our first time trying it out. We're like, we'll try to land Friday and we'll play on Saturday. It's whatever. But honestly, from here on out, we're gonna definitely start flying in on Thursday and get that day's rest before we actually play on Saturdays. Because I feel like that was a huge reason why we started off so slow.
So after London, you face Optic Gaming, victory there. How much did that build the confidence?
Oh, that was a huge confidence builder for us. Like the first map obviously didn't go our way. It was looking very shaky, but after the first map, I was like, listen here, guys, we're not going off. We're not losing like this. Everyone just, I was like, everyone keep your head up. Let's go, man. And I just said one round at a time because the search was the next map. And honestly, we just kind of prospered after that. We won 3 straight, and then we went on to play London the next day.
And confidence must have been high. You were talking about scrims and having scrimmed Chicago so much, so you already had a really extensive game plan for that particular team. So you must have been at least pleased with how it all shook down facing Chicago in that elimination game in the semifinals.
Oh yeah, for sure. We definitely we knew like almost everything they did. Like right off the break, we were like, they like to do this and this and this, so be careful for that and that. Like we were really prepared for that match.
So take me into what you were saying to your team when Chicago went up 2-0. Like you must have still had that confidence, or at least the belief that you would be able to get back in the series. But what did you tell your your players?
Oh, of course. So how the series went. So we lost first map by about 4 or 5 points. It was a very close series. We had control of the first map the whole entire time, and unfortunately we lost it. It was like we knew we had what it takes to beat those guys. Second map we were up, I believe 4-2. We ended up losing 6-4, and we choked just a couple rounds we should have won. So after the second map, I was like, listen here, guys, we should be up 2-0. We have what it takes to beat these guys. Let's just bring the fire this map. We know how to play this map. We're undefeated on this map. They are too. They actually kind of disrespected us because St. Petrograd is the only map we're undefeated on land, and they chose to play it versus us, and we honestly took it to them. We, no disrespect, we kind of shit on them.
Did it, one of the big storylines, of course, going into this one was brother versus brother, right? Like, there's a lot of attention on Prestini and Arcides going into that. Did you talk to Prestini at all beforehand? Like, did you think that it would be a distraction, or do you think that Prestini really rose to the occasion? Like, how did you handle that as a coach?
I mean, the thing is, like, Preston really just wanted to prove that he's just his own player. Like, everyone was like, honestly, it's not really Twins, it's always Alec, like, the past few years. And everyone, like, Preston always knew how good he was and how high his ceiling was. And I believe this event really showcased how good of a player he really is.
Are you proud of him? Because just the fact that, I mean, he was almost overlooked after that great season with E United, right? Like, and then here he is with Florida, and then having this kind of performance. How proud are you of him?
Oh, I'm so proud. Like, he went from potentially not getting picked up by, like, many teams. Like, he was actually surprised. He was like, yeah, no one was hitting me up to join a team, like, during the offseason. I was like, well, that's actually mind-blowing, because you are such a great player, and you literally just came off a world championship, and we were glad to take him in. And we knew how good and how, like, how intelligent, how great of a player he was, and that really showcased this weekend.
What did you think of your team's emotion immediately after the victory over Chicago, just that moment?
Oh, it was very heart-wrenching. Like, Preston, like, we went to the back right after while they were doing the interview, when we watched it, and Preston came to the back, and he was very teary-eyed, like, he was very, like, sad, and he just, like, gave us all a hug. It was very, very emotional.
One thing, actually, before we get to the final, I forgot to ask this earlier. In the game against Optic Gaming, there was that confusion, right? The 146, 145, the draw, etc. Can you just tell me what was the interaction like with the league? Like, I don't think we have much clarity on how they reviewed it. Did they give you any information on that?
Well, pretty much, we just assumed we won the map. I went up there and I was talking about what to do for the next map, and then the ref came over and he was just like, hey, listen here, guys, we have to review the the final for the last map. And I was like, I was confused. I was like, I mean, I know it showed a draw, but it obviously showed we won up, like, we won by a point. So he was just telling us, we're gonna review this, and you know, if the review doesn't go your way, you guys can dispute it. And we were just like, all right, well, I mean, no way this doesn't favor us, and if it does, we'll just dispute it. Like, we kind of knew we were gonna get the win, but if we didn't, honestly, that would have been pretty bad. But it didn't, so not worried about it.
You guys must have assumed, but based on the scoreline, it must have just been an anomaly or a bug then, and you guys just kept calm the entire time. It took about like 10 minutes, right? The whole process.
Yeah, it did. We didn't expect the review to take that long, because, like, our case was at the end of the first half, like, they got to tick for 2 points and we got to tick for 1 point. So it's only right at the end of the game when we got to tick for 2 points and they got to tick for 1 point, it only calculated in the game. So it only made sense. And I feel like that was a really good defense to why we should have won that map.
So let's talk about the final now. Obviously, Atlanta taking home the crown in their hometown. But what are your major takeaways from your team, particularly from that final?
Well, honestly, just making it there, it really showed, like, how good of a team we really are and how high our ceiling is. I feel like our team, like, lacked practice compared to teams like Atlanta, where they were playing continuously, like, through, like, the Christmas breaks and, like, maybe, like, the New Year's. Like, they kept playing. And teams like we took a break, and that kind of set us back, where those guys just got really far ahead. And I feel like every team is slowly just becoming like at an even pace and even level. Honestly feel like every team in the league is actually, like, very good. Like, I feel like the only team that's really far ahead right now is Atlanta. I feel like every team is literally on an even level.
Are you happy that the first match that you have in the next tournament is against Atlanta, so you get to run it back?
I am, actually. I feel like that first match will definitely set the tone, and I feel like if we come out and get that win, I feel like that event is definitely ours for the taking.
So last question for you, just based off of your team's performance, many people weren't really predicting this, right? Obviously, we talked about it earlier, Atlanta, Chicago, etc. But how do you think that the league views Florida now after Atlanta?
I mean, I think a lot of people actually did have us as a dark horse. Like, obviously, we weren't like, yeah, we're a top 2, top 3 team, but, like, we were definitely a dark horse. Like, people seen the talent on our team, and we do stream some scrims, so there's a glimpse of, like, us showing how good we really are. But I don't know. I believe that our team is definitely, like, a top 3 team right now, top 2 maybe. But I really think we still have a lot to work to do, and we'll show that in LA.
Atura is the head coach of the Florida Mutineers, joining us here. Thank you very much for your time.
Thank you so much.